Okay. So have you ever tried to sit down and like meditate and all of a sudden your mind is like, did I leave the oven on?
Oh, yeah.
Like it never stops.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive today into some ancient wisdom that might help take control of your thoughts. We're using as our guide a Buddhist text on meditation.
Okay.
And it actually outlines 5 specific strategies for dealing with those like pesky thoughts that just keep...
It's so relatable. And it's like you say, you sit down to meditate, ready for some peace, and it's like, what am I making for dinner? Did I reply to that email?
Yeah.
And the text starts by kind of explaining this concept of becoming.
Becoming. Okay. Like a butterfly.
Not quite. It's not quite that existential. Becoming in this context is how our minds are constantly creating these thought worlds. And we get totally absorbed in them. Like all those plans we're making, worrying, replaying memories, all those thought constructions.
So instead of like experiencing the present moment, we're like building mental castles in the air.
Yeah, precisely. And it's not that thinking is like a bad thing.
Right.
But we want to be the ones in control. We want to be choosing when we think.
Yeah.
Not just getting swept away by every random thought that comes up.
Especially when you're trying to meditate.
Especially during meditation.
Because if you're trying to focus on your breath and all of a sudden you're redecorating your living room, that kind of defeats the purpose.
Exactly, yeah. The text actually lays out a simple rule. If a thought is about your breath, it's fine. Everything else, drop it.
Oh, easier said than done.
Yeah.
But that's where these 5 strategies come in.
Exactly. So, strategy number 1 is to return to the breath. Sounds simple.
Yeah.
But there's this cool analogy in the text about an inchworm on a leaf.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
All right.
Little inchworm munching away.
Yeah, so one end of the inchworm is clinging to the leaf.
Right.
But the other end is waving around looking for the next leaf to grab.
Oh, so it's like our attention is that inchworm. Like part of it's on the breath, but part of it's looking for the next distraction.
Exactly. And it's not just we get distracted. It's that part of our mind is seeking that out.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what we need to become aware of.
So the practice is like catching that inchworm before it jumps to the next leaf.
Yeah.
So as soon as we notice our mind has wandered, gently bring it back to the breath.
The more you do it, the better you get at noticing when the attention starts to drift.
Right.
It's kind of like if you imagine watching a play, but from backstage.
From backstage. Okay.
Like when you're in the audience, you get caught up in the story, emotions, the illusion of it all. But backstage, you see all the mechanics, the set changes, props, actors getting ready.
Oh, so you're not fooled by the illusion.
You're less fooled, exactly.
So like by constantly coming back to the breath, we're going backstage in our own minds.
Yes.
We're seeing how those thoughts hook us in.
Exactly. And that awareness is key because sometimes just going back to the breath isn't enough.
Right.
That's where strategy number 2 comes in.
Ooh, okay. Lay it on me. What is it?
It's about focusing on the drawbacks of whatever is distracting you.
Okay.
Really looking at that thought and where it might lead if you follow it.
So instead of just being like, oh, I'm thinking about work again, it's like, if I keep obsessing about this work problem, I'm going to get stressed, ruin my evening, and probably not even solve anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you're kind of assessing, is this thought helpful, beneficial, or is it just entertainment, a way to avoid being present?
Right.
And oftentimes when we examine those thoughts, they lose their appeal.
That's so true. It's like a mental decluttering project. We're identifying those thoughts that aren't serving us, and we're just like tossing them out.
There's also a second part to this strategy, which is countering a thought with its opposite.
Okay.
So let's say you're caught in a loop of anger.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling. Road rage, anyone.
Right. The text suggests cultivating thoughts of loving kindness, compassion, both for yourself and for whoever you're angry at. Or if it's lust, you might contemplate the impermanent nature of the body, for example.
So you're kind of like creating an antidote to the poison.
Exactly.
Kind of like it.
Using your mind to counteract what's going on.
Okay, so we have coming back to the breath, analyzing the drawbacks, and now what? What's number 3?
Sometimes the best response is no response. Learning to ignore the thoughts.
Really? Because I feel like whenever I try not to think about something, I just think about it more.
Yeah, it can feel counterintuitive, but the text really emphasizes that attention strengthens thoughts.
Okay.
The more you engage with a thought, the stronger it becomes.
Like, don't feed the trolls.
Exactly. By ignoring it, we're kind of starving it of attention, of what it needs to thrive. This takes practice, of course, but it's a powerful technique, especially for those repetitive thoughts.
Okay. So we've got returning to the breath, analyzing the drawbacks, ignoring. What else?
Number 4 gets a little bit more subtle.
Okay.
It's about relaxing the tension that comes with the thought.
Wait, tension? I thought this was all mental stuff.
It is mental, but our mental states are tied to our physical sensations.
Oh, interesting.
And as you practice mindfulness, you'll start to notice that holding on to a thought actually creates tension in the body.
Huh. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that tension?
It could be anywhere, really. A tight chest, a clenched jaw, a knot in your stomach. And as you get more aware of these subtle sensations, you can learn to relax them before the thought even fully forms.
So it's like you're diffusing a bomb before it goes off.
That's a great way to put it. The text uses this analogy of a spider in its web.
Yeah.
So the spider's perfectly still, but incredibly sensitive to vibrations on the web.
So we're like that spider.
Yeah.
Like we're attuned to those little vibrations of thoughts.
Yeah.
And then we can address them before they become big distractions.
And that really shows how interconnected our mind and body are.
Yeah.
By learning to relax the physical tension, you can prevent those thoughts from gaining momentum.
Okay. That's cool. I'm liking this multi-layered approach.
Yeah.
So what's number 5? What's like the big boss battle technique?
Number 5 is suppression.
Ooh.
Sometimes you need to bring out the big guns.
Oh, okay. Like mental nunchucks.
It's more like a mental sledgehammer
Okay.
for those really stubborn thoughts that just won't quit.
Gotcha.
So one technique that's described is gently pressing your tongue to the roof of your mouth,
Okay.
clenching your teeth slightly, and repeating a phrase to yourself.
What kind of phrase? Like these thoughts are not real?
It can be anything that helps you interrupt that thought pattern.
Okay.
So it could be, I will not think this thought. It could be a mantra.
Gotcha.
It could even just be the word stop.
It's like we're building a dam in our minds to hold back those thoughts.
Exactly. And it might seem like a forceful approach.
Yeah. But it really highlights an important point.
What's that?
Be willing to use whatever works.
Okay.
Sometimes the most elegant solution isn't the most effective.
So we have a whole toolkit here, from like gentle nudges to full-on mental martial arts. Which strategy is working best for you?
I really appreciate having all these options.
Yeah.
The key is knowing yourself, knowing what you tend towards, what kind of mental weather you're experiencing at any given moment.
It's like we need to be mental chameleons, like changing our approach based on the situation.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
So there will be times when your mind is calm and focused. There'll be times when it feels like a wild jungle.
The important thing is that we just keep practicing, keep coming back to those strategies.
It's about befriending your mind, understanding its quirks and habits.
Yeah.
And learning to work with it skillfully.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Good.
But I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. Yeah, we've only just begun.
So much ancient wisdom.
Yeah, after a short break, we'll delve even deeper into how these strategies can be applied beyond just meditation.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right.
So we've been exploring these 5 fascinating strategies from Buddhist teachings to help us manage our wandering minds.
And like you said before, these techniques have implications that extend far beyond the meditation cushion. They give us valuable insights into how our minds work in our everyday lives.
It's like we've been given this incredible toolkit.
Yes.
And now we need to learn how to actually use it in different situations.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So let's say you're trying to focus on work.
Okay.
But your mind is just buzzing with distractions, like emails, social media, that unfinished Netflix series.
Ugh, tell me about it. It's like my mind has this built-in app for procrastination.
Yeah, right. Well, in that moment, you can apply these same principles we've been talking about. First, just try noticing the distraction. Like, what is it that's pulling your attention away from your work?
Right. Becoming aware of that inchworm.
Exactly.
Reaching for that next leaf.
And then you can gently return your attention to the task at hand.
Okay.
Maybe remind yourself why this work is important to you. What are the benefits of staying focused?
That's where the analyzing the drawbacks comes in.
Exactly.
Like, okay, if I keep checking social media, I'm not going to finish this project on time.
Right.
And then I'll be stressed and probably miss that deadline. And suddenly that funny cat video just doesn't seem that funny anymore.
Exactly. You're making that conscious choice about where to direct your attention. You're not just being ruled by those fleeting impulses.
And sometimes we need to be more assertive.
Yes.
Like with those distractions that keep popping up.
Yeah, that's where ignoring can be helpful.
Okay.
Creating a mental boundary. Saying no to those thoughts that are trying to hijack your attention.
It's like mental noise-canceling headphones.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a skill that takes time. The more you practice it, the better you'll be at recognizing those distractions early on and not engaging with them.
It's like we're training our mental muscles.
Yes.
To be more disciplined and focused.
Yeah, and this has implications for our well-being overall.
Right.
Because when we're able to manage our minds more effectively, we experience less stress, less anxiety, and a greater sense of peace.
It's like we create more space in our minds, a sense of spaciousness that allows us to just be more present.
Yes.
Be more creative.
Yes.
More connected to the world around us.
Beautifully said. And I think this brings us back to that concept of becoming.
You mean how our minds are constantly making these thought worlds and getting lost in them?
Yes, and how that tendency can lead to suffering.
Right.
We become so entangled in those mental stories, those worries, the judgments, that we lose touch with the present moment.
It's like we're living in our heads instead of in the world.
Exactly.
Yep.
And these 5 strategies give us a way out of that trap. Okay.
By learning to just observe our thoughts, to understand their patterns, and to choose how we respond to them, we start to break free.
It's like we're reclaiming our power.
Yes.
We become the author of our own mental narrative. We're not just being swept along by it.
That's a great image. And it reminds me of another key point from the text.
Okay.
The importance of understanding the underlying causes of those wandering thoughts.
What do you mean by underlying causes?
So those thoughts that we label as distractions, they're actually trying to tell us something.
Interesting.
They might be pointing to unresolved emotions, limiting beliefs, or unmet needs.
So instead of trying to silence them, we should actually listen to them.
Yes.
Try to understand what they're trying to communicate.
Exactly. So let's say you keep getting distracted by thoughts about work, even when you're trying to relax.
Okay.
Instead of just getting mad at yourself for not being able to shut off, you ask yourself, what about work is causing me so much stress? Are there any underlying issues I need to address?
Like those thoughts or symptoms. Yes.
And we need to look deeper to figure out the root cause.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And sometimes just acknowledging those underlying causes can be so freeing.
It's like we're taking those worries and fears out of the shadows and bringing them into the light.
Exactly.
Where we can start to work with them.
Yes. And that's where these 5 strategies come in.
Okay.
They give us tools to manage those thoughts, but also to understand their deeper meaning.
Right.
And address the underlying issues.
I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Yeah.
It's not just about calming the mind. It's about understanding ourselves better.
Yes.
And using that understanding to create a more meaningful life.
That's beautifully said. It really speaks to the transformative power of these teachings.
Yeah.
They don't just offer us a quieter mind, but a wiser and more compassionate heart.
I love that. This has been such an insightful conversation.
Good.
Before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. We've talked about these 5 strategies as individual techniques, but I'm wondering how they might work together. Do you ever use multiple at the same time?
All the time.
Really?
I think it's rare to use just one. It's more like they all weave together, and it creates this really dynamic and adaptable approach.
Can you give an example of how that might look?
Okay, so let's say you're meditating and you notice your mind wandering to thoughts about a presentation you have to give.
Okay.
First, you gently bring your attention back to your breath.
Right.
You remind yourself that you want to be present, but then you start to analyze the drawbacks of getting all caught up in those thoughts about the presentation.
If I keep obsessing over this right now, I'm just going to stress myself out and it's not going to help me give a better presentation.
Exactly. And then you might realize that there's some anxiety there.
Okay.
Maybe you're feeling unprepared or worried about what people will think.
So we're layering the strategies.
Yes.
First, returning to the breath. Then analyzing the drawbacks, and now acknowledging those deeper emotions.
Exactly. And depending on what's going on, you might also choose to ignore those anxious thoughts.
Okay.
Focus your attention on the breath or on a calming mantra. Or if the anxiety is really strong, you might even use a suppression technique.
So it's like a personalized mental workout.
I love that.
We're choosing the exercises that work for us in the moment.
Yes. It's about understanding our mental landscape, what tools we have, and using them to create a balanced and peaceful state of mind.
This has been so empowering.
Good.
It feels like we've been given this roadmap to understanding our own minds.
Remember, this is a journey. It's not a destination.
Right.
So there will be times when you feel like you're mastering your mind, and there are going to be times when it feels like your mind is mastering you.
The important thing is that we keep practicing.
Yes.
Keep experimenting. Keep approaching our minds with that sense of curiosity and compassion.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We all have wandering minds. That's part of what makes us human.
But with these 5 strategies, we can choose how we relate to those thoughts.
Yes.
And we can transform them from distractions into opportunities.
Exactly. You said something before about befriending our minds.
Yeah. It's about learning to work with our minds, not against them.
And I think that's a great place to leave our listeners.
Okay.
As you go about your day, remember that your mind is a powerful tool. It can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. It's up to you.
I love that. It's like we have the power to choose.
Yes.
Where we focus our attention, how we respond to our thoughts, and what kind of inner world we create.
And remember, this journey isn't just about quieting the chatter. It's about cultivating wisdom, compassion, and a deeper understanding of ourselves.
This deep dive has been incredible, and I can't wait to see what we uncover in future episodes.
Me too. It's always inspiring to look at these ancient teachings and see how they apply today.
So as we wrap up this episode, here's a final thought for our listeners. Pay attention to those wandering thoughts. Don't just dismiss them. See if you can notice the patterns.
Yeah.
The themes.
The underlying emotions.
You might be surprised by what you find.
You might.
And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. So we've been looking at these 5 Buddhist strategies, and it's pretty amazing how relevant they are, even though they come from ancient traditions.
I think it just speaks to how timeless those insights really are. You know, they get at something that's really fundamental about being human, like how our minds work, how we can find some peace.
Yeah.
Even when there's so much going on around us.
Like we've been given this map of our minds, and now we actually need to go on the journey.
Exactly. And, you know, it's one thing to understand it all.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to actually live it.
So what would you say to our listeners who are ready to take that next step? Where should they start?
Well, I think the most important thing is just noticing when your mind wanders without judging yourself for it.
So instead of getting frustrated, we just kind of watch those thoughts with curiosity.
Yeah, like a scientist observing something interesting. And you'll be surprised by how often your mind actually does wander.
Oh, yeah.
And what kinds of thoughts pop up. So just notice what triggers those distractions, you know? Where does your attention go when you're not focused?
It's like we're becoming detectives of our own minds.
Yes.
Gathering clues about our habits and patterns.
And once you start to see those patterns, you can try out those 5 strategies.
Right.
See what feels right for you.
Okay.
See what works in different situations.
So if someone is always worried about the future, they might try focusing on their breath or practicing gratitude.
Exactly. Yeah. And if someone's stuck in the past,
they
could try analyzing why they're holding on to those thoughts or just letting them go.
It's like we have this whole toolbox and we can pick the right tool for the job.
Yeah, I love that. And there's no one right way to do this, you know? It's about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
And that might change from day to day.
So we need to be flexible, adaptable, patient with ourselves.
Exactly. It's not always going to be a straight line.
Yeah.
You'll have good days and bad days. Sometimes your mind will feel calm and focused. Other times it'll feel like it's all over the place.
The key is to not give up.
Yeah, just keep coming back to those strategies.
Keep practicing.
Be kind to yourself.
It's about building a new relationship with our minds.
Yes.
One that's based on understanding and kindness.
And as we do that, I think we naturally become more present. More compassionate.
Yeah.
More connected to everything around us.
It's been so great to explore this with you today.
Yeah, me too. It's always inspiring to see how these teachings can help people.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Remember, your mind is a powerful tool. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy, and the choice is really up to you.
And bring that curiosity and compassion to your own mind.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself for the thoughts that come up. Just notice them.
Right.
You always have a choice about where you focus your attention.
And don't give up. It might not be easy, but it's so worth it.
It is.
You can find a level of peace and clarity you never thought possible.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive. Until then, may your minds be clear and your hearts be open.
Thanks for joining us.